friends, I'm back with another amazing book recommendation, which is Sam Walton's autobiography written with John Huey, Made in America. It's an outstanding book, and in Sam Walton's down-to-earth style, Sam Walton narrates his story, his life story about how he went about building Wal-Mart. Sam Walton retires from the army in 1945 as a young man, and one of the things that he knows after retiring is that he wants to go into retailing. And he actually gets experience by working for a company called JCPenney, which still exists in the US. And one of the defining aspects of being on that job is Sam Walton is so good as a salesman that he was always busy taking care of his customers, and so much so that his hands were so full that even his paperwork was actually shoddy. The only reason he didn't actually get fired from his job was because he was such a high performer. So having cut his teeth with retailing as a salesperson, Sam Walton realizes that that's exactly what he wants to do for the rest of his life. He and his friend planned to purchase a Ben Franklin store, but his wife turns him down, saying that partnerships hadn't worked out very well for them. So Sam Walton and his friend do not go into partnership, but Sam Walton borrows money from his father-in-law and purchases what is called as a Ben Franklin, which was a brand at that point in time, Ben Franklin store. He does very well, but he gets forced out of his lease because the landlord wants to turn over the same business to his son. That actually turns out to be a blessing in disguise for Sam Walton. Eventually, Sam Walton goes on to found Wal-Mart in what is a small town called Rogers outside of Bentonville, Arkansas. Bentonville, Arkansas is a small city. It's not one of the most well-known cities like Los Angeles or New York or any of them across America or across the world. So it is still in what is called as the southern belt, the southeastern belt, Arkansas. So Sam Walton starts there, and he not just success after success, because of just a few key traits that he possesses. One is he loves the customer. It is fashionable to say that the customer is king, but he loves the customer and he fiercely believes in serving the customer in and out, so much so that even when Wal-Mart was a $50 billion company, when 3 or 4 employees are traveling together, they don't end up taking an individual room. They actually end up staying in one single room. And when the employees question Sam Walton tells them that if we actually spend foolishly, all of that money comes out of the customer's pocket. So that level of customer obsession is actually unheard of. It's actually putting the customer at the center of everything. And there are a few key traits that there are a few key takeaways from his autobiography that we get. One is he was ignorant, he never knew retailing, but he was infinitely curious. He was ignorant, but he never let that ignorance actually get to him. So he was always curious to try new things. And when they started up their own first store, which is actually short for Walton Mart in Rogers, he gives his employees a free hand, and people try so many things that many of them turn out to be successful. The second thing which we actually gather from the story is the spirit of experimentation. They're experimenting with merchandising, they're experimenting with promotions, they're experimenting with all kinds of things on a regular basis. And that actually brings in so much success and so many footfalls. And the third thing is Sam Walton always learns from the competition. Another fashionable thing to say is not to study the competition because you end up becoming like them. But Sam Walton had his own unique style. If the competition actually sold X, they did not necessarily sell X. They understood their customer and learned what the competition was trying to do and adapted a whole host of it. And that actually kept him going for a very long time. He shares an interesting story of going up to New York, which was the center of a lot of retailers' operations and headquarters at that point in time. He would introduce himself as Sam Walton, founder of Wal-Mart, and he would ask people in various departments all kinds of questions, and they would willingly forthcome. They would be very forthcoming in terms of information about operations. So that gives Sam Walton a great deal of understanding about how that business was actually run. There are three or four other key takeaways. One key takeaway is always swim upstream, go against the tide. And in terms of the promotions, in terms of actually doing things that people may have actually unheard of, he was actually a pioneer. And that spirit actually trickled down to the rest of the company as well, and that held them in very good stead. The corollary or something very similar to swimming upstream is looking for offbeat or ideas that many may not be aware of, or ideas that other people may not have thought of. So once one of his employees sells 500 lawnmowers, which they usually sell over a year and a half, in just a weekend. Now, how does that happen? By actually keeping a very open mind and looking for offbeat idea sources. He always thought small and he focused obsessively on the details. Now, a lot of leaders actually say you have to think big and actually leave the details out to the operations. But if you are in a business which is actually people centric, if you have to go into a business which has to bring savings, operational efficiency, a whole host of these things, you have to be detail oriented. And when somebody actually questions Sam Walton about his philosophy, about thinking big, he just tells them that we've started with one store, we'd be happy to have another 2 or 3 stores. And eventually, by beating Kmart, Sears, JCPenney, and a whole host of other retailers, Woolworths, Wilco, Sam Walton's Wal-Mart ends up becoming the largest retailer. And that is also because of his people focus, his very down-to-earth attitude. They list their shares on the New York Stock Exchange very early and raise about $50 million. But eventually the company, as it grows, the share price keeps growing, and Sam Walton and his family become billionaires. But Sam Walton continues to drive what is called as a pickup truck and never lets the money get to him. They don't change their lifestyle, and his people-centric attitude never disappears. So he puts his faith in people, gets the right people on board. So if we were to look at 4 or 5 key takeaways from this book, it is that you have be down to earth. If you are building an operationally intensive business, have a lot of people centricity. Be infinitely curious. It is one common trait that a lot of entrepreneurs have. Be infinitely curious. See what makes people tick. See what makes things tick. How nature works, and don't be afraid of experimenting and look for offbeat ideas. It's an amazing read. Today, Walmart is facing stiff competition from Amazon as the world changes, but Walmart is making its own strides as well, because it's in the hands of professional management, and we are bound to see a lot more innovations, and perhaps the best is yet to come. Amazing book. I ask you to dive into this and gorge on the wisdom that Sam Walton has to share for us. Until next time. Click on the bell icon and hit subscribe to get the latest episodes.